Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today, I have something pretty exciting to share with you. We are continuing with our inventory management system here. And today, we're actually working on the inventory manager. And if you remember from last week, our video we had up in this corner here in our diagram was the actual inventory manager. Now, this is kind of an invisible thing. It's literally just this script that's going to be on our BRS mechanics. And this script is going to manage everything that we pick up, everything we drop, all that kind of stuff. It's going to manage how much stuff we can have in an inventory. So it is essentially kind of like our butler. We're going to give it a bunch of information and say, now go forth and make sure that this all works. So it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to take care of keeping track of what we have, keeping track of whether or not we can actually have room to add it into our inventory. It's going to tell the inventory on the screen to update. And when we drop something, it's going to have to recreate that item and drop it in the world in its new state. And by which I mean, if you've played games like Fortnite, PUBG, all these battle royales, if I pick up a gun and I shoot it a bunch, so I'm running around killing enemies, pop, 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 and then I drop the gun, it has to have less ammo now. So that's another thing that the inventory manager is going to have to do for us. Okay, so for today, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the formation of the actual inventory manager script, this script here, and we're going to update the script on our items so that they can work with this script. So let me show you what we're doing, and then we'll look at the code, and then I'll explain everything, okay? So this is a script that we're going to apply to our BRS mechanics. And again, if you're not familiar or if you're new to the series, welcome. The BRS mechanics is a blank object. So you just right-click and say create empty, and don't forget to set its transform to 0 out. If you just right-click into the corner here, you can choose reset, and that will make this all zeros and make the scales all 1. So this will be just in the world. That's all we care about. And then you just drag and drop the script over here and you'll see this. Now, you may have to adjust this. This might say, size might say 0 at first. I'm going to set it to 6 for the eventual prefab that you'll get because we're working with 6 inventory slots here. Makes sense, right? So let's go down the list and look at this. So number of inventory slots. This is actually going to eventually drive this, so I put 6 in here and it will automatically make this 6. So how many slots do you want? 6. Then this 0 through 5, notice that that is a total of 6, and if you're new or unfamiliar with programming, a lot of programming languages and the underlying engines count from 0 as being the first in a series. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get a total of 6, okay? So that's something we're going to have to work with when we do our coding, but that's all right. You'll notice that all of these are blank. I have nothing in my inventory yet. I just started the game. Next, our next available free slot is 0 right now. So we're going to work with that in code, and we're going to use that to actually look ahead and see where do I have a blank slot that I can put something. Sounds good. The item inventory manager. So this is nothing right now. It's going to get the actual management, the incoming item, in item. So the thing that we're picking up. It's also going to get its name, because that's how we're going to classify the items. And then we have these 2 buttons here. Can we stack it? Is it stackable? So if it's like a health potion, that kind of thing is stackable. Or if it's something like these, the bullets, those are very specific where we're just going to pick those up and we're going to add to a different type of inventory item. We're just going to add to a total, but it's not actually an item that's going to go in here. For today, it is, because I just needed something to show you. So we just have bullets all over the place. Tons of bullets. It's like a John Woo movie. But I'm just going to put them all in here and use them as an actual inventory item for today. And then we have the can add. And this is a boolean that will eventually be hidden. But this is actually, when you pick up an item, we're going to talk about this. You don't just pick it up right away. It has to go through a whole series of checks and balances. Okay, but here's how it's going to work. So in the scene here, I have 7 items, I believe, maybe 8. 8 items. And I will actually be able to pick up 7 of them because I'll be able to pick up 6 items. And one of them is set to can stack, so it won't actually count as an added inventory item here, but it will just increment the count to it. Okay, so let's go down the list here. So I'm going to pick up this item, and notice what happens. It goes up into me and disappears. It's actually floating at my feet right now because I've disabled the destroy code for now. I'm just trying to work with one thing at a time. But this item is still in the world, but now it's inside of my inventory. Right here I have light bullets has been added into element 0. So that would be this first spot right here. Okay? Then let's go and pick up the next one. 2. You notice here, it looks up the next available spot. Here it is. Next free spot is 1. So 0, 1, and then it filled that spot. Now when I pick up this item, it'll say, okay, This is the one that can stack. Look at that. Can stack, and he had this button checked. So this is a stackable item. So you notice this didn't change, and this didn't change. So we still only have 2 items in general in our inventory, but that second one, that third one we picked up there, was stackable. Now let's go over here and pick this guy up. Boop. He'll go into the 3rd spot there. Notice the next available free spot was 2. So 0, 1, 2. It correctly did that. Okay, we'll keep going. So this one, and this should be the last item we can pick up. We'll pick that item up. Okay, I'm going to clear my console here, and you'll see the message that we create here. I'm now full on my inventory. I have 0 through 5 completely full. So if I go to this item and I try to pick it up, notice the animation didn't play, nothing happened, and it says here, attempt to add to our inventory if we have room. And then it says, you are over encumbered. We have no more room. And you'll notice that our next available free slot here is set to -1. And we're going to look at that in code, how it's going to say, if you get this crazy number here that's below 0, that means it could not find anything in here that had an available free space. Okay, so one more thing I want to show you related to that. So let's hit play here. I'm going to show you how it does that. So if I go over and I pick up a couple items, I'm going to pick up these first 2 items here. There we go. And maybe the 3rd one. So there we go, because that's a stackable. Now, what I'm going to do is over here, I'm actually going to drag and drop, and I'm going to fill in this slot, and I'm going to skip one and fill in the others. So now I should be able to pick up just one more item. So out of all these, I can only pick up one more. Let's clear the stack so we can see it. And it's going to look for and find this 3rd spot. So if I go to this item, hit T, whoop, there we go. It filled in the 3rd spot, and it told me the 3rd spot was available. Now, I mess with it by just dragging these things over, but now, if I click one time here so far, it has told me that I'm over encumbered. So I go to this item and say, can I pick you up? Now you see it says 2 times, you're over encumbered. And now it will not allow me to pick up anything else. There we go. So that's all working nicely. So now that we've seen a working example of it, let's go ahead and check out the code. So I'll bring up good old mod develop here for as long as we have it. So you'll notice this inventory manager, this is a new script. And it has a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to talk about it, but don't worry, it will be available for you in the download. All right, so right away we have a couple of variables. We're going to say that number of slots, this guy right here, and then we're going to set up an array of game objects that is our item inventory. And then we're going to have a public integer, which is what is the next available free slot. That's the thing we talked about already. Then we're going to have a public FN item manager called incoming item manager. I know this is crazy, but this is the class name of the script that's on our other thing. So each of these objects in the world have this FN item manager script. That's what handles all the cool stuff here that we did in previous videos, right? So what I'm doing here in the management script is I'm saying, hey, I want a new variable of that type of item, FN item manager. And I want to call it this for this script. So it's the incoming IN item manager. Okay? Then we're going to say, let's go ahead and put a string for the incoming item name, and then 2 booleans, which we'll set to false to begin with, that are can it stack and can we add it. All right. Next, we need a public game object, or private game rather, that is underscore BRS mechanics, because we're going to, in the start method here, we're actually going to assign that by finding the game object in the world that is our BRS mechanics. So it's going to automatically look this up and then fill this variable with a link to that. Okay? Same thing here. We're going to say BRS UI manager. So this is another thing. This is up here, the BRS UI, the UI manager that we did last time for all the icons on the map, right? So for that, we're going to look that up and we're going to fill that with UIM for UI manager. And right here, that gets filled in as well. There we go. So it's just automatically finding these things for us. Okay, so we're going to have one major function here called add to inventory. And it's going to do a bunch of stuff that we're going to skip right now, and I'm going to come back to it because I want to show you where this actually comes from. So this is the inventory manager. This is sitting here saying, I'm just waiting for a call to say, hey, I want to add something to the inventory. Well, that call comes from the FN item manager, okay? So this is on every single item, and when you run over the item, remember from our previous video, let's go down here and take a look. On our previous video, when we are in range and we press the button, it's going to pick up the item, which calls the animation and does all this stuff. But you'll notice that we added something here. We're actually setting a trigger, and then we're actually going to call our function. So right here, we're calling our function out and saying, hey, go call this function called add to inventory and give it the item we're picking up. And as long as it's not a blank thing, then we'll be all set to do this. And the blank thing means that it comes back and says, hey, I don't have room for this, right? So we're calling this function. So how are we calling a function on another script? Well, up at the top here, let's go up top. Just like we did in the other script, we're going to have a variable to call that. So let me find it here for you, right here. Private BRS inventory manager _ IM, okay? And then in our start function, just like we did in the other one, this _ IM equals BRS mechanics.get component BRS item inventory. So inventory manager, pardon me. So what that's doing is each of these is saying, hey, at the beginning of my life, I need to figure out who the manager is. So it's going to look through this and find BRS mechanics, and it's going to go under that and find the inventory manager script, and it's going to get a link to that. So now here's where we set that link up right here. Okay, and you'll have the script to download. You can look at this later, but I'm just briefly explaining. This is how we do that. So that then down here, I can say _ IM dot, and now I can call a function on that script. So I'm going to call a function called add to inventory. And if we go over to our inventory manager, that's what this is called. Okay, so it's actually reaching into the inventory manager saying, hey, I want to add this thing to the inventory. And you'll notice that it takes a game object that we're going to call new item. So right now, all that's happening is when we pick up the item, it's going to say, yo, inventory manager, here's a thing that I want to add. Okay? And what we're doing here is we're putting it in an if statement saying, if you get back a positive, like a thumbs up from this function, if it is not a negative, then you can do all the rest of this stuff, which is just the animation right now. Okay? So let's go and check out what that function is. So when an item gets picked up, it's actually calling this code right here. So let's take a look at what it's doing. Right away, we're going to set our can add to false. So we're going to say that this item is asking for permission to be added. And right away, we're going to say, no, you do not have permission to be added. You have to prove yourself to me. Okay? So we're going to look at our incoming item manager and get its script. Then we're going to say, based upon that script, what is your name? Because we're going to say, get the name of the item. All right? And these are right now called light bullets. Cool. We're going to do some code in a future video because it's a little more complicated than for today. But we're going to do some code to see if we already have one of those items. This is more for like if you're playing Fortnite, or I guess Fortnite is the best example right now because this is a slot-based inventory. If you already have a certain type of gun and you can only have one type of gun for that inventory space, then we need to check and see, do you already have one of these? If so, then we can't just double stack it because it's not a stackable item. Which leads me to my next point. The can stack boolean gets filled with the incoming item manager's is stackable property. So if we go and look at the item manager, it has a property at the top called is stackable, which is false. Except for if you look at some of these, which one is it? Is it 2 or 3? This guy, this number 2 in the back of that last one in this first row, I've checked is stackable. So that means that if we go to our inventory manager, if it is stackable, then this can stack would now be true. Okay? So if it's true, we say, let's just increase the inventory and return. We're done with all the code. So this is a stub, what we call a stub. This is just a debug message for future coding that we're going to do. And this is saying, if it's stackable, then we don't need to actually go through all the rest of this stuff. We're just going to say, let's call some future code and say, go ahead and add this to our inventory. So if you have 1 health potion, you pick up another one, increase it to 2. That's all that says. If it's not stackable, if we cannot stack it, then we need to actually do some stuff. So we're going to attempt to add it if we have room. Okay? So some of this is actually going to get encapsulated under here eventually. So do we have room? So we're going to look at our next available free slot. And if we get back a -1, that means we're full up. Okay? So if our next free slot, when we call that code down here, we'll talk about that in a second. If when we call that, we get back anything below 0, the only thing we can get that's below 0 is a -1, that means that we're over encumbered, we're full on inventory, and we can do nothing more. So we just say, nope. And in the final game, this would literally just be, return null. It's going to say, nope, you can't do it. Maybe you could play a sound effect or do something. Otherwise, if it is not stackable and we can add it and we get 0 through 5 back, then we're going to add it to the inventory. So we're going to make a temporary variable called new slot ID. And that new slot ID is going to be the number we get back. So that's going to be that 0 through 5. So if we go back to this, let's see, BRS mechanics. When this gets filled up, it's going to be 0 through 5. That's what it's going to give us. So then we'll work on the IDs for the inventory icons at a later time. But right now, we're going to say inventory item. Let's go ahead and add the new slot ID equal to the new item. So we have this whole array, 0 through 5. And the array, this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. And instead, we're putting this variable we just filled. So we can kind of dynamically look it up. So you have a list of things, 0 through 5. This is going to tell you which one, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 5. And we just store it in this variable name, so we'll throw it into there. And that's equal to our new item, which is the thing we return from this function. So remember, our function says if it's not null, if we don't get back nothing, then we're good. So we're returning now 0, 1, 2, 3, or 5. And then we set our can add equal to true, which means yes, you've been approved, you can add it to the inventory. There's a lot of stuff that goes on when you pick up an item in a game. It looks instantaneous and it feels smooth, and that just means they did a great job. But there's actually all this intricate stuff underneath, which is really fascinating to me. Okay, so then when that's all done, we're going to go ahead and return out with our item. All right, but this magical function we call here to figure out which free slot, that's done down here. So our next free slot is equal to, and this is a function that's built into Unity, okay? System.array index of, and what I'm looking for is I'm going to give it my array, my 0 through 5 over here, and I'm going to say I'm looking for the first one you come to that is null, okay? And I'll show you an example of that. So if we hit play and we begin, if you look right now, these all say none. The value of each of these is null. So when I go to pick up an item, the first one that's going to come back when it counts 0 through 5 is going to be 0. So I hit T and it's going to fill that in. And see, it fills it in right here. Next available free slot is 0. And notice the can add was set to true because we said, yep, you've been approved, which means you were approved. In here, can add is equal true. And we returned the item. We said, we're all good. Everything can be done. And if it was no, then we just would drop out. And then we reset it at the beginning of the function because we don't want to give instant permission to the next item just be added, willy-nilly. So there we go. So we call this function here to find the next available free slot. We go through this function for a new item that wants to be added. It has to go through a couple of checks and balances. So it will say, what are you? What is your name? Are you stackable? If you are stackable, we can just increase. We don't have to actually add you. If you're not stackable, we're going to attempt to add you. And to attempt to add you, we're first going to look and see if there's space for you. If there is not space for you, sorry, better luck next time. If there is space for you, then we're going to find the space that we know is there and now say, let's go ahead and fill that item in the inventory in this array with that item and then return. So that's it. So that's all it's doing for now. We're going to be doing a lot more with this, and what I'm working on for next time is as you pick up these items and they get filled in, let me select it again so you can see it. As they get filled in, we need to actually fill in the screen as well. So let me show you that working a little bit so far. So I clear this out. So here's kind of how it would work. I would go and pick this up, and then an item would be added. There you go. And it's in the wrong place right now on purpose. I was testing everything here. But this item here is a separate type of code. I guess I can show it to you, share it with you. So the UI manager, this is what I'm working on. So this is not finished code and will not be in the download for this week, but we'll do it next time because it's very complicated, as you can see by this one line. But I just hooked up a thing to literally here, see add inventory icon. When I press the P key, it fills in, so I can change this to 0. So we'll build this. So now 0 is the first index, right? So that's the first slot. So if we change that, and let's stop the game, let's let it compile. It's compiling, there we go, it's happy. And now we will play. And let's clear this just so we can see everything. So now I'm going to pretend I'm going to hit T and then P. So T and P. So that's what it would do. it would fill in an icon here. And these are those draggable icons, which I'm also working on some code to destroy them. So the idea is that, again, let me show you just because I have to keep clearing it. When we pick up the item, it would also add the icon after it's done doing the animation, or maybe just right away. It would add the icon here. And now the idea is you can drag this around. And remember, we have our inventory screen here, so now I can't move, and you're supposed to be able to drag these around. And what I'm setting is the code so that if you drop it outside of here, it will actually drop the item. So if I do this, it'll disappear. And that's when we would call some code here to spawn a new object, which you can see here in the corner, it says the object is out of range. So it's outside of the acceptable range of another item that can drop on. And it says instantiate a new object here. So that's the little stub I left for myself to where after you drag and drop it out of this area, we have to spawn whatever that item is. So we have to actually remember the items as we pick them up. Now if I hit P again, it'll just reappear here. And of course I can do this anytime I want because of the way that the code works right now, but we're going to fix that to say you have to be in this mode to do that. So there you go. So we made some great progress today. So just as a quick recap for you guys, we've got our inventory manager started here on the BRS mechanics. We've got the ability to add items as we pick them up. We know that it dynamically looks for the next available slot. It's going to tell us what the item is. And that's important too, because you can pass that along to something like, say, like an achievement system when you pick up your 1000th whatever, right? So we got a lot of information in there. It tells us what we're picking up, and it tells us whether or not we can stack it. That's important for other items. And then in the future here, we're going to be able to pick up these items and add the icon to the screen. And we'll work with the icons next week, and we're working on the actual inventory items themselves. So if you look at the items here, all of these parameters, we're going to be just putting a ton of parameters into here to figure out everything we can ever need to know about an item. We're going to fill it all in so that we can get this data in here. And we're getting really close. So again, when this is complete, yes, there will be an asset you can just download and use, and I'll have as best I can, like a little help file to explain it all. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed, and I'm sorry for episodes where it's a lot of talking and code and not a whole lot of visual stuff is going on, but you know that when you're in game development, this is the important stuff that makes it work, because otherwise it's a pretty statue and it's not a game. So we need to have this stuff in here, and it's super important, and it's a little boring sometimes, but it's so exciting to see it work. And that's what makes me happy, is just when it works and you go, oh, this is so cool. So thanks again for watching, guys. And until next time, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.